Hey everyone, today we'll be pulling the engine out. And thanks to all that have watched and subscribed, I really appreciate it, guys. I'm still new to this YouTube thing, so please bear with me. So before I drop the motor, I wanted to clean up a bit and move the car to make more room. And I also wanted to lift it at least 24 inches off the ground. Because earlier when I had it at 18 inches, I couldn't move freely and it was very difficult to work under the car. It would have been easier to move with those wheel dollies, but I didn't have them available at the moment and I had to move it on the floor jacks. I'm using 2 floor jacks to keep it level while lifting. I got these 12-ton jack stands from Harbor Freight. I would say they are a bit too much for this, but I needed these for their added height advantage over the smaller jacks. These go all the way up to 32 inches, which is what I really need while pulling the motor out. And they also felt more stable and safe. Safety should always be the priority when working under a car that is on jack stands. It is better to test and retest everything before you go under it. Even try to rock the car off the jacks on purpose. This is because if there is any chance of it failing, it is better to fail when you are not under it. Always slide something under the car like wheels, just in case it fails. The entire process took over 12 hours. I started around 10 AM and was done by midnight. I wouldn't recommend doing it all by yourself if you have a choice, but it's completely doable. I was tired by the end of it, but I think it's worth it. Here I am removing the suspension support beams and then moved on to the sway bars. They come off fairly easily. That's my baby Tyson, and he's my cheerleader today. He really likes to be around cars. Now with all the suspension support beams removed, it's time for the exhaust to come out. As with any exhaust, these bolts were rusted. And to be frank, without the impact gun and the swivel socket, it would be a nightmare to get these off. After that, I started to remove a few things from the top. The air intake tube and the mass airflow sensor has to be disconnected. Then I removed the belt and then to the AC compressor bolts. In the rear trunk, the engine harness has to be disconnected from the ECU and routed into the engine bay. Now I needed to drain all the fluids and started to disconnect the fuel and hydraulic lines. Quite a bit of fuel comes out of these lines. It is better to keep the garage ventilated and allow 30 minutes for these to drain before moving on to the next steps. Meanwhile, I started to drain the coolant by removing the drain plug on the engine. This is a very messy job, and whatever you do, coolant will spill and splash all over, so eye protection is a must. I had to cut the coolant hoses because I was not able to remove them. Next were the CV axles to go. I needed to slide the rubber boot to access the hex bolts. To access all of these bolts, I had to turn the axle while in neutral and engage the handbrake to untorque the bolts. Generally, these axles would slide out of the wheel hub, but as this car was sitting in the water, they were rusted and I could not get them out. So I had to zip tie them out of the way for now. After that, the gear selector cables had to come out of their ball cup connectors. I used a small crowbar to pry them out. Then I have to unplug everything else from the engine bay. The vacuum lines, the power steering reservoir, the dipstick and the fuel rail connection had to go. A lift would make this very easy. Anyway, I got this furniture cart from Harbor Freight and it was very helpful lowering the engine. had to put a few pieces of wood to support the transmission. And finally the engine could be unbolted. Only 8 bolts held it all together. 4 for the engine mount and 4 for the transmission. I had to clear a few hoses, wires and other stuff as I was dropping the engine down. Halfway in the process, I took out the AC compressor and placed it on the driver's side floor. One of the biggest problems I had in this whole process was pulling the engine out from under the car once it was down. The cart I am using doesn't go all the way down, so I had to lift the car more than 32 inches. My floor jacks can only lift 24 inches, and I had to use wood and iron blocks to lift the car to 32 inches. It was not so stable and I felt a little unsafe at this point. Even then, the engine wouldn't clear the body, so I had to turn the engine 90 degrees under the car and then slide it out. Pulling the engine out from under the car took me 2 hours, as I had to lift the car and then try every other way to slide the engine out. The front wheels of the cart are fixed, and I had to lift the entire cart with engine on top of it with the floor jack and muzzle it out. Finally, it was all out. In the next episode, I'll be discussing the build plans for the vintage-inspired Formula Racer we'll be building here in this channel. Stay tuned guys. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one.